Hi, my name's Logan. I'm 19, just an ordinary guy trying to figure life out. I live with my dad, Thomas, an architect who's always buried in work, juggling one project after another. My mom passed away when I was little, so for most of my life, it's just been me and Dad. It wasn't easy, but we made it work. A few years ago, everything changed when he remarried. Her name's Victoria. She's not your typical stepmom, she's young, sharp, and honestly feels more like a friend than a parental figure. But lately, things between us have gotten complicated. It all started on a lazy afternoon. My dad was out of town for work, as usual. Victoria had gone out to run errands, leaving me alone in the house. I didn't mind the solitude, I've always been comfortable on my own. I spent the day in my room, scrolling through my phone and letting the hours drift by. The quiet was almost soothing. I had just stepped out of the shower, my hair still damp, wearing nothing but a towel. Stretched out on my bed, I let my mind wander, completely unaware of what was about to happen. The house felt unnaturally still, no hum of appliances, no creak of floorboards, just silence. I brushed off the eerie feeling and turned my attention back to my phone. Then I heard it, a soft knock at my door. My heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? I wasn't expecting anyone. For a moment, I froze, debating whether to throw on a shirt or ignore it altogether. Before I could decide, the door creaked open. Victoria stood there, framed by the doorway, her eyes locking onto mine in a way that made my breath catch. She looked casual yet effortlessly stunning in a simple sweater and jeans, her dark hair cascading loosely around her shoulders. She hesitated, as if unsure whether to step inside, and for a second, I thought I might be dreaming. "Sorry," she said softly, her voice tinged with nervousness. I didn't mean to interrupt. Caught off guard, I scrambled to pull a shirt over my head, but something in her expression stopped me. She wasn't upset or annoyed, she just stared. Her gaze lingered a little too long, and the air between us felt charged. "Victoria," I stammered, my voice shaky. I wasn't expecting anyone. She stepped further into the room, her movements slow and deliberate. Her hesitation only added to the tension. "You should lock the door," she murmured, her tone light but carrying a weight I couldn't quite place. I didn't think, I started but faltered. Her presence was overwhelming. She stood so close that I could feel the warmth radiating from her. Her eyes, deep and unreadable, held mine, and I couldn't look away. It felt like time had stopped, like the walls around us had vanished. "I know," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Her hand brushed against my arm, sending a spark through my skin. The touch was brief, almost accidental, yet it lingered in my mind. I wanted to say something, anything, but my thoughts were a jumbled mess. For a moment, it felt like she was waiting for me to act, to close the gap between us. Her hand hovered near mine, and before I could stop myself, I reached out slowly, my fingers trembling as they moved closer to hers. She didn't pull away. Instead, she stood there watching me intently. I stepped closer until we were almost touching and raised my hand to her face, gently brushing against her cheek with trembling fingertips. Her skin felt warm beneath mine, the connection undeniable. The tension became unbearable, leaning forward, slightly closing distance between us until loud footsteps echoed through hallways, startling both apart abruptly. Victoria flinched, stepping back quickly, barely registering movement before turning red, whispering, "We can't." Her voice cracked, panic evident. "This isn't right." I stood frozen, heart pounding, knowing full well she spoke truth, yet unable to ignore feelings stirring within. Something shifted between us, something unforgettable. Days dragged heavier, replaying moment ahead. Wade looked at me, breath quickened, closeness consumed thoughts, entirely unable to share. Anyone, friends wouldn't understand. Dad? He couldn't know. Told myself keep distance, but every time saw Victoria felt pull again. Lingering glances, softened voice speaking directly towards it, all seemed intentional, though shouldn't have been. Tension grew stronger, like invisible thread tying together no matter hard try to ignore. One evening after dinner, Dad, working late again, sat couch, flipping channels without paying attention screen. Victoria walked wearing loose sweater, leggings, hair pulled back, ponytail, looking casual, captivating. "Hey," said, sitting beside. "Mind join?" Swallowed hard, trying maintain composure. "No. Of course not." Her shoulder brushed against mine, faint scent perfume filling air, all could do keep thoughts check. Sat silence, tension building every passing second. So, began hesitantly, about other day. Stiffened, unsure respond, Victoria. Barely steady, don't know happened, don't know why. Before finish placed hand, mine simple touch electric igniting every nerve, body didn't pull, instead whispered, can't stop thinking about Logan, about you. Heart race, turned face, eyes held vulnerability hadn't seen before, also deep yearning, Victoria. Her voice trembled. I feel same, but this, it's not right, I know, murmured breaking. But don't know how stop. Air between thickened, slowly leaned lips brushing against mine, kiss soft, hesitant yet sent wave, emotions crashing over, moment world disappeared, leading just to us. Then, just as quickly, she pulled away. We can't, she whispered, her voice heavy with regret. This will ruin everything. Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. She was right, I knew it. The weight of what we'd done, of what it could mean for my dad, was too much to ignore. Yet, as she left the room, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not even close. The days after that kiss blurred into a haze. I moved through them like a ghost, haunted by the memory of her, the way she'd looked at me, the softness of her lips, the warmth of her touch. It replayed in my mind on an endless loop, a fire I couldn't put out no matter how hard I tried. But with every thought of her came a crushing wave of guilt. My dad had always been my anchor, the steady hand that held me together after Mom died. How could I betray him like this? Yet, no matter how much I tried to push Victoria from my mind, she lingered, stubborn and unshakable. Every glance she sent my way, every accidental brush of her hand against mine sent my pulse racing. It wasn't just attraction, it was something deeper, something I couldn't explain, and it terrified me. One quiet Saturday morning, I found myself in the kitchen making breakfast. The house was still, save for the sizzle of bacon in the pan. I hadn't seen Victoria yet, but I knew she'd be up soon. The thought tightened my chest. I tried to focus on the task at hand, cracking eggs, flipping bacon, but my mind kept drifting back to that moment in the living room. As I set plates on the table, I heard soft footsteps behind me. My body tensed. Turning around, I saw her standing in the doorway. Her dark hair fell in soft waves around her face, and she wore a simple blouse and jeans. Casual, yes, but to me, she was radiant. Morning, she said, her voice carrying a weight I couldn't ignore. Morning, I replied, my voice catching slightly. She stepped into the kitchen, her gaze lingering on the table before settling back on me. The silence between us was thick and suffocating. Finally, she broke it. You've been avoiding me, she said quietly, more statement than question. I froze. I'm not avoiding you, I stammered, though we both knew it wasn't true. She moved closer, her eyes searching mine. You are, she said softly. And I don't blame you. I've been trying to figure this out too, Logan, trying to make sense of it. Her words hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. I wanted to tell her I felt the same confusion, the same pull, but my voice failed me. She reached out, her fingers brushing against my arm, and the touch sent a shiver through me. This isn't right, she whispered, her voice trembling. We can't keep doing this. I don't know how to stop, I admitted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I don't know how to stop feeling this way about you. Her expression softened, but there was sadness in her eyes. You have to, she said firmly, though emotion laced her words. For your sake, for your dad, for all of us. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was right, I couldn't ignore the consequences of what we were doing. My dad, the man who had sacrificed so much for me, didn't deserve this. But knowing what was right didn't make it any easier. I don't want to hurt anyone, I said, my voice breaking. But I don't know what to do. Victoria's hand dropped to her side as she took a deep breath. We have to let this go, she said quietly. Before it's too late. Her words felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but I nodded anyway. Deep down, I knew she was right. Okay, I whispered. We'll stop. She gave me a small, bittersweet smile before stepping back. But as she turned to leave, I saw the struggle in her eyes, a mirror of my own. We both knew the temptation wasn't gone, it lingered between us like an invisible force waiting for its next chance to slip through the cracks. For the first time, I understood the weight of what we were choosing, and if we didn't stop now, there would be no turning back. Regret would follow us forever. The days that followed were excruciatingly long. Time itself seemed to slow just to torment me further. We avoided each other as much as possible, me burying myself in schoolwork or video games or pointless scrolling on my phone, her retreating into whatever distractions she could find. But no matter what I did, she was always there in the back of my mind, her voice, her touch, the way she softened when she looked at me, all etched into my memory like scars. One night when the house was still and my thoughts became unbearable again while staring at ceiling replaying moments together over kiss living room near room whispered name carried more weight bare each memory paying guilt enough erase longing to seem different cross paths happened often wanted glance briefly away trying pretend nothing happened yet tension unmistakable falter spoke careful measured keep distance just no space put pull remained evening dinner heard cleaning kitchen while hold office normally would gone avoid something held stood doorway watching wash dishes tied loose bun strands escaping frame. Her face looked tired but undeniably beautiful even then, something I couldn't quite put into words stepping into kitchen before second guessing myself. Need help? Asked voice softer intended. She turned startled moment expression softened no got replied voice hesitant then suddenly aware how close turned back sink but thanks. Hesitated unsure whether leave stay silence between us felt heavy thick things couldn't say finally cleared throat. Victoria began voice trembling about everything. Logan interrupted tone firm not unkind turn face eyes searching mind don't have talk about both know what mistake one can't let happen again. Words stung even though knew true no said swallowing hard but doesn't feel just mistake. She flinched, my words striking a nerve. It doesn't matter what it feels like, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It can't happen. She trailed off, her hands gripping the edge of the sink as she turned away. I can't hurt him, Logan. And I won't let you hurt him either. At the mention of my dad, my chest tightened. He trusted us completely, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing between us. The thought of betraying him twisted my gut, but it didn't erase the magnetic pull I felt toward Victoria. I don't know how to stop, I admitted, my voice cracking under the weight of the confession. I've tried, God knows I've tried. But every time I see you, every time I think about you, it doesn't go away. Her shoulders sagged, and for a moment, she looked as lost as I felt. Do you think it's any easier for me? She asked, her voice raw with emotion. I can't stop thinking about you either. But that doesn't mean we can do this. She turned to face me fully, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. We have to let this go, for your dad, for ourselves. This, whatever this is, it will ruin everything. Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I wanted to argue, to tell her we couldn't just bury what we felt, but deep down, I knew she was right. We were teetering on the edge of something dangerous, one misstep away from a fall we couldn't recover from. I nodded slowly, my throat tight. You're right, I said, barely above a whisper. We have to stop. Victoria closed her eyes briefly, as if my words brought her a sliver of relief. Thank you, she murmured. For understanding. The tension between us didn't vanish, it lingered in the air, heavy and unspoken, but for the first time, it felt like we were both trying to do the right thing. She turned back to the sink, and I slipped out of the kitchen, guilt pressing down on me like a stone. The next morning, I woke early to a quiet house. For the first time in weeks, the pull toward Victoria wasn't as suffocating. It was still there, a dull ache in the back of my mind, but it no longer consumed me. I avoided her that day and the next, determined to put distance between us. Days turned into weeks, and though the tension never fully disappeared, we both worked to keep things normal. I threw myself into my studies and hobbies while Victoria focused on her work and spending time with my dad. Slowly, the house began to feel less oppressive, and I started to believe we could move past what had happened. But every now and then, I'd catch her looking at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, her gaze lingering for just a moment before she quickly looked away. And each time, my chest would tighten, a quiet reminder that some feelings don't fade easily. They linger in the shadows, waiting to pull you back toward the edge one more time.